Think about the scariest underwater game you've ever played. Right now you're probably imagining scenes of deep water, something lurking just beneath the surface, and the fear of drowning in an endless abyss. The name of that fear is Thalassophobia, and game designers have spent decades using it. Subnautica, Iron Lung, Soma just put the player in the ocean and the water does the work. So here's a question that kept me up after finishing Still Wakes the Deep. What exactly is the water doing? Because I don't think it's the wetness. I don't think it's the drowning. I think it's closer to the feeling of knowing you're somewhere you aren't meant to be. And if that's true, if Thalassophobia is about depth and isolation, then you don't really need the water at all. You just need an oil rig, alone in the North Sea in December 1975, with something waking up underneath it. We arrive on the Beira Delta oil rig off the coast of Scotland as Cameron McLeary, or Kaz as everyone calls him. He's an electrician, but more importantly to the story, he's a man running from something. 4 months ago, Kaz assaulted someone outside a pub. Some guy who insulted his wife Suze, put him in the hospital, and now the police are looking for him. His friend Roy got him this job on the rig to lay low, but Suze isn't happy about it. She's written him a letter talking about leaving, about how he's always running from his problems instead of facing them. And honestly, she's right. But before we can dwell on that, we're introduced to the life on the Beira Delta. It's near Christmas, so most of the crew has gone back to shore, leaving only a skeleton crew to keep things running. The rig itself is in rough shape. Cadle Oil, the company that owns it, has been cutting corners. Pipes leak, equipment breaks down. The union rep, this guy named Trots, has filed safety complaints that all get ignored. This is a detail that matters more than it seems. Cadle Oil, just like the ocean, is a villain in this story, and the game wants us to know that before anything else goes wrong. It's like they're putting a disaster in front of us that was always going to happen. We're still in the canteen, and that's where we meet the rest of the crew. Gibbo, O'Connor, Brody, a young guy named Ravs who's terrified about his first dive. There's even Adair, who everyone hates because he's a supporter of the National Front, a far-right political party in the UK. The crew gets along well for the most part. They know the only way to survive in a place surrounded by miles and miles of nothing is to have each other's back. And lastly, in a hallway nearby, Engineer Finlay is fixing some leaking pipes. From their conversation alone, you can tell Kaz and Finlay are good friends. She needs a smoke and Kaz offers her his lighter. And this is one of the most important moments in the entire game, but we're going to figure out why later. The game takes its time introducing each character, and I appreciate that, because when everything inevitably goes wrong, these people matter. They're our colleagues, our friends, and that's what makes what's about to happen so much worse. On the way through the deck, we can see men working and we get a real sense of what it's like to call an isolated place like this home. One thing that stands out is this guy Roper, who oversees the drill and mentions something happened they can't make heads or tails of. He's concerned, genuinely unsettled. He says the drill's hitting something else, but there's no protocol for something else. And nothing sells this unique feeling of thalassophobia better than that. Because instead of being stuck at the bottom of the ocean is coming up to meet us. So his concern gets filed away as worker paranoia, just another complaint on a rig full of them. And that moment, that ignored warning, is where the horror actually begins. Kaz gets called to the foreman's office by a guy named Davy Rennick, who immediately starts tearing into him. The guy is pretty full of himself and seems to think he's untouchable.
But out here, I am the fucking king.
Apparently, the police contacted the rig, and Rennick knows about the assault. He fires Kaz on the spot and tells him to get onto the next helicopter off the rig. And just like that, Kaz's refuge is gone. But as he's heading to the helipad, something happens. The drill awoke something it shouldn't have. Rafs was down in the diving bell when it happened. Something went wrong with the drill. It hit an unknown object, and there was an explosion. Brody and Douglas helped Kaz back up after he fell down from the helipad, and immediately he's sent to help Brody get Rafs out of the diving bell and figure out what's going on. And that means going underneath the rig using the external walkways. And this is the moment where Still Wakes the Deep shows you what kind of game it really is. Because as Kaz makes his way across the narrow metal platforms, we can look down through the grating, and below it is the North Sea, restless, dark, and distant. The kind of distance that made my stomach drop, even though I was technically still standing on something solid. And here's the thing, that reaction shouldn't be possible. We're not in the water, we're above it. So why does this feel exactly like the opening sequence of Subnautica? Perhaps it is because Thalassophobia was never really about water. It's about being surrounded by something vast and incomprehensible. It's about depth without reference points. And this is exactly what I mean with ocean horror without any water. We're not in the sea, but we can still feel the exact same type of terror. An oil rig like the Beira Delta doesn't protect anyone from that feeling. It just gives us a thin metal floor to stand on while we experience it. Kaz makes it to the drill, and that's when he sees it. There's something growing on the drill. Fleshy, organic, moving. It doesn't make sense, but there's no time to process it because the structure is falling apart, and we turn left because Kaz needs to get inside. But Rennick, helpful as always, tells everyone there's really nothing to worry about.
There's been a minor drill issue, so for the time being we are suspending drilling operations until it's fixed. Stand by for further information. This is a temporary drill issue.
Drill issue? Jesus Christ.
Yeah, exactly my thoughts. If that were true, we wouldn't be seeing stuff like this slowly taking over the rig. We're now in one of the rig's massive support legs, and as we descend, we can hear something screaming. Finlay, who's also in this area known as Lexi, tells Kaz it's Gibbo screaming. Apparently oil was dripping from the ceiling above him, and when it dropped down and came into contact with him, he started screaming and tried to attack Finlay. Something started messing with his body until he detached and crawled into the ceiling. The only thing that's left to see is this room covered in flesh. Something is fundamentally changing the people that are stuck on this ocean, and the first victim, well, clearly Gibbo isn't Gibbo anymore. We're trying to escape this area, and we get a glimpse of whatever is left of him on our way down a ladder. It looks like a blob of flesh with multiple eyes. The game really doesn't give us any time to process what we just saw, but that's what makes it effective, because our brain fills in the gaps. We knew Gibbo, we talked to him 20 minutes ago, and now he's this. Kaz then finds Douglas dead, pushes through to accommodation, and tries to figure out what the hell is happening. On the phone, O'Connor says something's wrong in engineering, that it's not safe, and then the line cuts out. The growth is spreading. It's on the walls now, pulsing, moving, and whenever Kaz gets close to it, his head starts to hurt. Kaz sees a door with a strange light coming from the other side. We can hear Trotz screaming out in agony. There's no way to help him, so we continue to find a way to escape this place. And this is when I realized what Still Wakes the Deep is really doing, because there's plenty of body horror here already. But it's not just that. There's environmental horror from the rig itself being assimilated into something. It's being transformed, and we, Kaz, are still inside it, trying to navigate an iron island above the water that's actively becoming hostile. So the game features some kind of supernatural entity, but the team behind Still Wakes the Deep describes the ocean as the game's secondary enemy, as it would evoke a variety of fears like vertigo, drowning, and claustrophobia. Unsurprisingly, they also described the movies like The Poseidon Adventure and Annihilation as inspirations for them. I decided to watch both movies before playing this game, and I have to say, you can very clearly see how it influenced the design. The Poseidon Adventure gives that claustrophobic dread of being trapped inside a structure where every familiar space becomes hostile. And annihilation, that's where the biological horror comes from. The way organic matter doesn't just kill but absorbs life into something incomprehensible. Rennick is still on the radio. Everything's fine. Back to work shortly. This is the same man who just watched the drill tear something open, and he is still optimizing for productivity. The game is making a point here that goes beyond corporate villainy. Rennick isn't stupid. He's just built an entire identity around control, and the thing growing through the rig's walls is probably the first problem in his life that doesn't respond to authority, and the easy thing to do is to simply look away. So while Rennick ignores the horror, we are introduced to the most disturbing voice line I have ever heard in gaming. Luckily, there are a few lifeboats for Kaz to escape with. We prepare it for launch, but of course, we're only about an hour into the game, and this would be too simple, so the line gives out and the boat falls into the sea. Rennick calls and says there's a helicopter on the helipad ready to leave. We need to get there as soon as we can and bring anyone who's still alive, or not mutated into a flesh blob, I guess. On the way there, we get a glimpse of Trots, who now has multiple tendrils coming out of him. This section got to me in a specific way, not because the monster is terrifying or anything like that, but because we spent the opening act listening to Trots file safety complaints. This is the Union rep, the same man who tried to do the right thing. It's clear that the creature doesn't distinguish between good or evil, but things are about to get even worse. On the main deck, a creature has completely taken over, grabbing workers and assimilating them into their mass, and we'll need to get past them to make it to the helipad. This is Mior, who we saw on the deck at the start of the game. After being infected, his entire body, aside from his face, was consumed by a fleshy mass that tore through his clothing, indicating that perhaps it grew from within. His face is unrecognizable. He has extra eyes and a mouth stretched unnaturally wide on one side, but despite everything, he still has a blue hard hat on. Safety first. This guy called Innes guides us through the mess to avoid being spotted by the being. Without him, we'd never make it to the elevator where he's waiting for us, but then...
Shit! Hold on! No!
This moment feels like the ultimate gut punch because Innes only died to help us escape. Still Wakes the Deep spent the last hour teaching us that survival on the Beira D means cooperation, that these men look out for each other because that's the only way anyone makes it in a place this far removed from the mainland and this close to the water. And that's what gets him killed. More biomass for the creature. When we finally arrive at the helipad, Rennick is already trying to take off. Kaz tries to stop them, but it's too late. And then mid-flight, something happens in the cockpit. A struggle. The helicopter crashes directly into the rig and Kaz is knocked out cold. When he wakes up, he has a flashback, a conversation with his wife Suze before he left, her telling him he needs to face his problems, not run from them. She makes a good point because now, trapped on this rig, Kaz doesn't really have a choice anymore. Brody calls and tells Kaz to get to the radio room where they can contact the support ship, but first the generators need to be restarted, and that means Kaz has to go back down into engineering. We head through the accommodation area and this is where the helicopter crashed. We run into Rennick, who has also been merged into the biomass and turned into a blob of flesh. He starts to chase us through the corridors and this moment is genuinely horrifying. Not because of the monster itself, but because of what it represents. This is the man who fired you. The man who cared more about profit margins than safety regulations. The man who hours ago was screaming at you from behind a desk, convinced of his own authority, and now he's been reduced to the same fate as everyone else. The rig doesn't care about hierarchy. The creature doesn't distinguish between foreman and electrician. Everyone becomes the same thing in the end. Finlay guides Kaz through restarting the protective relay, but the generators need to be restarted manually, and of course, that means going to the generator room, where Adair, now transformed, is hunting. Kaz has to sneak past this thing that used to be his crewmate, start the generator, and get out before it catches him. And the entire time, the growth on the walls is glowing brighter, pulsing faster, like the rig itself is starting to wake up. We're now ready to turn the power back on, but the thing that used to be Adair isn't happy with it. The lights come back on and immediately the phone starts ringing. It's Brody with more bad news. The rig is sinking. The pontoons are flooding. These are the massive structures that provide buoyancy for deep-sea drilling platforms. They're supposed to stay partially submerged to stabilize the rig, but now they're taking on too much water, and if they keep flooding, the entire rig will sink. Kaz has to go down to the pontoons and engage the tension winches, and when I say down, I mean down. He descends through leg A, and the deeper he goes, the more water there is. First it's ankle deep, then knee deep. Then he's swimming. And okay, I guess the title of this video isn't entirely true because there's definitely something that resembles ocean horror here. We're underwater, swimming through flooded corridors inside the rig, and the game makes us feel every second of it. The visibility is terrible. The water is dark and murky. Bodies float past or are stuck behind doors. Former crewmates who didn't make it. We reach the tension winch in leg A and engage it. One more to go, leg B. But getting there means swimming across the other pontoon, and the water level is rising fast. Kaz almost drowns, clawing his way to the surface just in time. In leg B, he finds O'Connor, or what's left of him. O'Connor is being assimilated into the growth. The tendrils try to grab Kaz, but we manage to escape, engage the second winch, and take the elevator back up. When we reach the top and look up, it's all becoming clear. The growth has taken over the rig. It's everywhere, covering the walls, the machinery, the structures, and in the distance where the drill punctured the seabed, there's this massive organic tower rising up from the depths. It's beautiful in a horrifying way, pulsing with light, almost alive. Still Wakes the Deep creates a Lovecraftian monster that isn't just infecting the rig, it is the rig now. Kaz makes it back to accommodation, freezing and soaked. Roy is still alive, but getting worse. He's diabetic and needs his insulin. The rig is on fire in the distance, and Kaz heads out onto the deck to find out what's going on. The growth is completely engulfing the derrick now, and oil is leaking from it. One spark and the whole rig will explode. Brody has a plan. Switch the flare stack to the auxiliary gas pipe. To be honest, I have no idea what that means, but of course we're the ones that will have to go out and do it anyway. Kaz finds the diverter valve, but Adair shows up again. Kaz has to sneak around the creature, divert the feed, and then climb across the stack to manually light the auxiliary feed. And this sequence is terrifying because Kaz is climbing a collapsing structure hundreds of feet above the ocean while a monster hunts him. He makes it to the end, lights the flare, and the creature is incinerated. But the stack is falling apart. Kaz doesn't make it to the end. He falls, crashes into the structure below, and blacks out. When we wake up, we're on the underside of the rig, hanging from the scaffolding, and when we look down, we can see the drill with an even stranger light coming from it. The thing that punctured something it was never meant to touch. And now everyone on the rig is paying the price for corporate arrogance, for Rennick's refusal to listen when the drilling foreman said something felt wrong, for Cadle Oil's cost cutting that left the rig barely functional, for the simple human assumption that they had the right to take whatever they want from the earth without consequence. Further ahead in the dive bell, we can see rafts, or what used to be rafts. The growth got him too. Back in engineering, Finlay and Brody are shocked to hear Kaz's voice. They thought for sure he was dead. But there's a new plan now. Brody will dive down and release the tension cable. If they can float the rig, maybe they can stabilize it long enough to get help. Kaz and Finlay need to get to marine control, and on the way they hear Roy over the intercom. He made it to a cabin on the roof of accommodation, but he's in bad shape. Kaz wants to help, but Brody insists they need to get to marine control first. Kaz ignores him and swims through the flooded sections of engineering again and ends up back in accommodation so he can get to Roy. The crew lounge is completely gone, just open air where a wall used to be. We navigate through the vents, avoiding Trots who's still hunting through the corridors. Kaz finds Roy's insulin and on the way out, Trots is killed by falling debris. Kaz makes it to the cabin and finds Roy. He's unconscious. He's gone. After everything, after all the swimming, the sneaking, the desperate scrambling to survive, Kaz couldn't save him. Another crewmate lost to the entity. Finlay calls and says he couldn't get to marine control, so Kaz has to go from where he is. Crossing more perilous walkways, more collapsing structures, we pass the tower, the heart of whatever came up through that drill, converting steel and flesh into something new, something that was here long before we drilled down and will be here long after we're gone. Inside Marine Control, we're about to witness the scariest, most unsettling scene I've come across in a game in years. We find Roper, the drilling foreman from the beginning of the game. He's barely holding on, fighting to stay sane. The corruption is changing him. We can see up close what it's doing to everyone stuck here. He gives Kaz a key and tells him to keep Rennick away. Kaz floods the forward pontoon. It works, the rig levels out, but there's a problem. Brody is still in the pontoons, and the flooding means oil and gas are getting pushed up through the drill pipe. If we don't hurry, Brody is going to drown, but on the way to drill ops, Rennick attacks us again. Even as a monster, he's furious, and it's obvious why Roper warned us to keep Rennick away. The Beira D is flooding with seawater, which means Brody's time is running out, but luckily, Rennick gets crushed by falling debris and drowns inside a hallway. Kaz makes it to drill ops and finds Finlay, but no Brody, and that's when he calls. He's trapped in the pontoons, the legs are flooded so there's no way out, and the gas and water is rising.
The rig's a time bomb now. You understand? One spark and...
Kaz tries to come up with a plan, but Brody cuts him off.
I knew the risk when I came down here.
And then over the radio, Kaz is listening as his friend drowns.
Kaz?
What's stupid? Talk to me.
It's getting higher.
Alright, I'm here, Brody. I'm not going anywhere. Alright, I'm here.
Get him!
Brody. Brody. Jesus.
And here's what makes this moment so unbearable. Brody chose this. He knew what would happen when he went down there. He did it anyway because that's what you do on a rig. You trust the crew to do what needs to be done while you handle the problem. That's the culture. That's the code. And the game uses that against you. It uses the one thing that kept these men alive, their willingness to die for each other. Perhaps it's that realization that makes Finlay snap. She's been holding this lighter in her hands the entire time. The same lighter that Kaz handed her at the start of the game. She's been holding it through every horror, every death, every moment of the rig becoming something unrecognizable. And now she understands what needs to happen. She's going to destroy the rig and the thing on it. We chase her, but she's crushed by falling debris before we can reach her. And now it's just Kaz. He understands what needs to happen. He takes the lighter and walks into the derrick, where the growth is at its strongest. It's massive now, pulsing, breathing, alive. There's definitely some kind of heartbeat. We slowly walk towards the center of the corruption, and this is one of the most quietly haunting scenes. Because Kaz spent his entire life running, but he's finally ready to face his problems. Kaz drops the lighter into the depths. The flames rise up the drill pipe, and the rig explodes. Everyone dies. Kaz, Finlay, anyone left. But in those final moments, Kaz sees a light. He remembers meeting Suze, falling in love, getting married. We're in a place that looks like some kind of afterlife. So Kaz tells Suze to kiss his daughters goodbye. We then open the bedroom door to the ocean, and Kaz passes on. The game ends with Suze reading a letter she wrote. Not the angry one from the beginning, but a new one that talks about love. about wanting to make their relationship work. And that's the end of Still Wakes the Deep. But the thing I couldn't stop thinking about while playing the game is just how ugly all of the people that work on the Beira D are. Okay, wait, hear me out. What I mean is that the crew of the Beira D aren't heroes. Most of them aren't even all that likable. They are just workers that are tired and rough around the edges, which makes sense because they are on a rig, miles from shore because they need money, or they're hiding from something in the only place that'll have them. Maybe ugly isn't the word I'm looking for. What I mean is that they're just ordinary people. When you talk to them, it really feels like they had lives before they came to this place. Roy complains about his diabetes meds. Finlay vents about the leaking pipes. Rafs is terrified about his dive because everyone knows what happens when things go wrong. Not that he could have seen this coming. Still Wakes the Deep understands that the horror only works if you care, because at its core it isn't about a cosmic entity, or the ocean, or the body horror, or the rig falling apart. This is a game about people who look out for each other to survive an already dangerous place like an oil rig. And it's a game about what happens when that bond, the one thing that keeps them alive, becomes the same thing that gets them killed. So that's what it's like to drown without water. It's a pretty short game, about 5 to 6 hours, but it's one of the most oppressive, atmospheric horror experiences I've had in years. I genuinely loved seeing the rig slowly decay into something otherworldly. I found myself just standing still and looking at the surroundings on multiple occasions. The voice acting is incredible as well. The Scottish accents are authentic and the characters feel real. They react in real ways. Like this moment where Brody asks Cass to go onto the flare stack.
Did you hear me, Cass? Wave or something so I know you're receiving. Understood.
So that's why, when they start dying, it genuinely hurts. If I had to give a single critique, it's that the game feels like a walking simulator with a couple of sneaking segments around monsters. I think some players might want more agency in those moments as well as the scares. But if you're willing to let the atmosphere do the work, if you're okay with a game that prioritizes environmental storytelling over combat, then Still Wakes the Deep is the perfect cosmic journey above the water. So as always, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this, make sure to like, comment, and hit the bell notification icon to stay up to date. And I'll see you in the next Cosmic Lore video.